Welcome everyone to what I believe is the penultimate RSE seminar for this term, on or in person. We're delighted to have today Sarah Jaffa, from the University of Manchester RSE group, who sort of has a background in astrophysics before joining the UCL RSE group, and then subsequently moving to Manchester, where she is now, with a particular interest in kind of project management as best suits research software engineers. And that's what she's, sorry, I was going to say, and also founded the Special Interest Group and the Society for Project Management for RSEs, which is what she's going to be talking to us about today.
Okay. Hello, everyone online and in the room. Okay. Yes, so I'm here to talk about project management stuff. Hopefully this is relevant to you even if you don't do project management. Any project you're involved in will need some managing, whether you are officially a manager of it or not. Or you might be working on your own projects and need to manage your own work in some way. But to give a bit of history of this, and really why I started getting interested in it. This is from the RSE International Survey in 2022, which was when I was just a new RSE. I've been there about a year and I wasn't doing any project management at that time. But this is a survey that they do worldwide of people who do research coding, not necessarily RSEs, but also researchers. And one of the questions they asked was, what are the 3 skills you want to learn to improve your job? And some of these answers came out as the expected things, you know, new languages, new technologies that were coming out, GPUs, Julia, better testing, all of this sort of stuff. But this one surprised me that one of the biggest ones on the entire survey was project management. And actually, this one down here, I believe, if anyone speaks French, that's just project management in French. So combine those two, if they'd done a language filter on this, project management would have been the biggest thing people wanted to learn. And I was sort of surprised by that, but also understood it because, you know, I'd gone from being a PhD student and a postdoc where you're collaborating with people, you have projects, work that runs over several years, the idea of how you manage it, it's fairly vague. And then I became an RSE and the timescales of everything had changed. You're working on shorter projects, some even a few months, some are still 5 years long and no one knows what the outcome is going to be. You're working with different people, with researchers, with collaborators, with other technical people. It's a whole different world, and trying to juggle that was difficult. And I was also seeing at UCL, every RSE team, I think, has a different setup on how they manage projects. But at UCL, what we did was we had every project had at least 2 people, one standard or junior RSE and one senior person who did project management, technical leadership, and was coding on the project as well. And a lot of the project managers spent their time doing a lot of the coding, a lot of the technical leadership, but the paperwork sometimes got neglected and projects sometimes ran into difficulties because things like, why are we actually doing this? What are we aiming to do? Is this what the researcher really needs? Got sidelined in favor of, I really want to learn Julia. Can we do this project in Julia? Or can we play with this new thing I found? Or I just really want to debug this horrendous code, even if the researcher doesn't care. And so I think we all felt like this needed some kind of framework. And I thought, if this is a big project that lots of people are missing, this is something I really enjoy, sort of the tidying up of stuff and the documenting of stuff and the talking to people bits that lend themselves to project management. So maybe I could help out. So I got an SSI fellowship to try and look into this, to see what the problem is, why do people need this training? Why is any current training not working? And how can we make this better? How can we make it so that people who are writing software for research feel like they are able to manage their projects and their workload well and efficiently? So I looked a bit into sort of what is a project. And I'm very completionist in this. I like to basically go back to first principles and everything. What is the historical, like, when did this even start? And if you're interested, the person who invented the Gantt chart, Mr. Gantt, was one of the first people who actually did, like, how do we manage work? But, you know, I like to know the definitions of things. So if you go back to Project Management Institute, they're a global organization. This is how they define what a project is. Temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product service or result. And the important bits here are it's temporary, so it's either time bound or budget bound. It can't be an ongoing forever kind of thing. A project has to be a set unit of work. You do something, you produce something, and that's it. A thing you're doing that is just we maintain a thing or we continuously deliver something, that is by their definition not a project. It also means something unique or new. So that can be a physical or a digital thing, or it can be creating a change in the world or in people. It's something no one's done before, or at least you haven't done before. So if you're doing something that is fairly repetitive, fairly standardized, like you're just continuously building websites, blogs for different people who want blogs, that is not really a project. That's a repetitive service that you offer. You're doing the same thing with slight tweaks every time. However, that is a difficult definition for us because we have all sorts of projects and they don't fit in those terms. I did once talk to a project manager when I started this. I found someone who's been through the project management course. I've been through an actual project management course and I said, we need help. What should we do? Like, if I tell you about my work, can you tell me what sort of project management I should be doing? And he turned around and said, that is not even a project. You can't manage that. I was like, great, that is unhelpful. So we don't really have the same definitions that formal project management people have, because what we call projects, they don't call projects. I would say what is unique can be different for different people. So it can be, you have to think about them making a change part of that. If you have a company that just makes websites and blogs again and again, fine, that's a service. But if you have a new person joining and they don't know how to do that, for them, that's a big change, learning this new system. So the process of a person learning how to do something might be a project, even if continuously doing the thing is a service. So this is the other way of phrasing that triangle of needs of time, quality, and cost, is that everyone wants things to be either good, fast, or cheap, and you can only have two. Again, this is a problem for us because researchers want all of those. And you may notice in the middle, that is daydreaming. You cannot have all of these. But researchers tend to want the best possible cutting edge tool. They want it done for no money because their grant is running out and they want it yesterday. So what I've been trying to do is learn how people formally define these things, how established project management training does things, and then say, okay, this isn't working for us, how can we change it? So what is a project in RSE terms? Their definition of a project clearly doesn't work for us. What's different about our world? In our world, yes, we are budget constrained sometimes. Our budgets are very small, but conditions are different for every single grant that you're working on. Some things have big consolidated rolling grants that go on for years and years. So some people might be working on projects that don't necessarily have an end date. You just keep working until the money runs out, or maybe they get another grant and you still keep working. Timelines can be uncertain or just incredibly varied. Some of our projects are a month, 2 months, some are 5 years. But even the longer ones, you don't know what the goals are going to be by that time. You know, the researchers are developing things and you don't know if what they're developing turns out good, you can implement it in the code. And if they actually don't find the new algorithm for doing that, then there's nothing for you to do. Or someone comes to you with a funding package and says, in 6 months, I'm going to want you to do 2 years of work and we've got a brilliant plan, and then they just never get funding. And so 2 months down the line, the concept of a unique product or a change is difficult for us because, as I said, how do you define that in research terms? All researchers' work should all be unique because it's all discovering new knowledge. But sometimes we're also building a website to showcase their pretty graphs, and we've done that 1,000 times. So some of the things we do are a project, some of them are more like a service or a process, or so we don't quite fit typical project management. As I said, the actual goal that you're trying to reach to, you're meant to create that final thing. Researchers tend to change their minds an awful lot, or have many things they want to do and not know which one is the best one. They want you to do something like, I've seen that Google can do this, can you build me this? And you have to say, well, yes, but they've got 10,000 people and they're paid about 3 times as much as I am. So no. And sometimes just the outcome isn't a thing. You know, we don't hand over a document, or we don't build them and deploy a tool. We just improve something they've already got, or we teach them to do something themselves, or we help them find a way around an issue they're having. The outcome isn't as easy to quantify and say, I have succeeded because I've done this and there it is. So we have to find other ways of deciding even if our projects are a success, or measuring them in some way. There we go. So then once you vaguely define what we do as a project, how do we manage it? And if you say to someone, what is project management? They might start saying the words in that yellow box on the right. They might say project management is Scrum or things, but that is not project management. That is a framework for project management. So I looked up a few people defining project management. Forbes, which is obviously online news kind of thing, defines it as the art of bringing together a team to complete a project successfully, which I think is annoyingly woolly and not very useful, because that kind of implies that you can just get a bunch of people with skills and plonk them in a room and they will produce something. And that takes a lot of the responsibility off the manager. It sort of makes you think you can just go, great, you once looked at the moon, you know about maths, and I've seen you build Lego. So if I put you in a room, you can build me a spaceship, right? And if you don't, it's all your fault for being bad. That is not how it works. So I looked at something a bit more tangible. The Association for Project Management say it is the application of process, methods, skills, and knowledge and experience to achieve a specific project objective. That sounds a bit more defined. What is a project management thing? Except again, this is not very specific. If I'm building a Lego set, I am, reading the book and following instructions, and I am doing a process and applying knowledge and skills, and I'm achieving an objective. But building a Lego set is clearly not project management. So then again, the Project Management Institute, who put a lot of work into this, they said it's the practice of planning and organizing and executing the tasks to turn an idea into a tangible product. At least they have mentioned planning and organizing, but they've also mentioned executing the tasks. And I sort of think of project managers as the people who are not doing the actual work, or at least when, even if you are the manager as well as the person doing the job, you should separate the time when you are being the developer in our sense, or the manager. And I feel there should be that separation between the two. So the best definition I could come up with, and I honestly don't know if I've read this somewhere, if it just popped into my mind, was project management is anything that will give the project the best chance of success, other than actually doing the work. There's someone, possibly you, doing the work, and you do the work to build the thing, and anything else around that that makes the work easier, that streamlines it, that talks to people about it, that evaluates it, that enables it in some way. That is all project management stuff. That is my definition. Feel free to debate that with me afterwards. But in my head, that's what separates project management from actual project work. And this helps if you are doing it yourself. How do you separate the tasks when you are managing something rather than doing something? Or if you're working in a team, who is doing the project management, who is doing the developing? That's it.
People just say it's a bit quiet, so I'm just going to see if I can turn it up.
Okay.
But I'll let you continue.
Can you do next slide?
Yep.
I think. Okay, so I try to, if project management is just a list of tasks that you need to do, if we define project management not by what it is, but by what you do on a day-to-day basis. So I Googled all of those blogs again. Sorry, it's the other side of the screen. And this is a huge list of all things that they variously think are project management. This is a lot of stuff. I should pause for a sort of mental health note. Being a project manager is stressful. There are a lot of things you need to juggle. Not everyone needs to do all of these things. There is a kind of bare minimum, and then there is, if you are working at Microsoft or Google and you have massive processes and huge teams and everything needs to integrate seamlessly and be planned and evaluated and hidden or advertised or whatever. This is not necessarily every task that everyone will do, but I want you to have a look at that and have a think. And people on Zoom, if you want to put in the chat, which of these do you think is not the job of a project manager? Anyone?
Line management.
Okay.
Writing and reviewing code.
Writing and reviewing code might not be the job of a project manager.
Mary said writing code.
Yeah, others agree with that.
Grants, someone else said.
Yeah. Writing, line management. Okay. Documentation, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. This is in my world, what is and isn't project management. This is the point where you have to go, every group is different, every project is different. So the only thing on this list that I have never been responsible for in my current job as a project manager is line management. That's because we have a matrix management thing, But I definitely know some project managers where you are also the line manager of those people and you need to be doing both of those things at the same time. All of the other things, it depends on where you are. So we are involved in grant writing. Researchers will come to us and they will say, like, I'm proposing this, I want to add in RSEs. Can you help me phrase this in a right way? Tell me what your skills are. Tell me how you can contribute to this. You know, what will the funding bodies like? We do technical architecture and writing and reviewing code and deploying things, all of those technical tasks that you might think are developers' jobs. The way we are currently set up, we have a project management grade 7 person, along with a more junior person. And if that junior person is not very confident, they're just learning, the senior person has to take on a lot of those duties. You might be designing the architecture, assigning them very specific jobs and reviewing their code. If you have a bigger project with lots of people, or if you have a really competent developer who's like a grade 6 or a grade 7 themselves, maybe they don't need you to do that. But again, we end up kind of parachuting in on whatever needs to be done. The developer is the person with the skills and they're trying to do the work, but you will do whatever is needed to support that person to make the project succeed. So how do we do this in RSE world? We've seen that there are a huge number of things that could be the job of a project manager or could not. How do you decide what is your job and what isn't your job? And this is whether you are the project manager or the developer or any other kind of role in the team. One of the biggest problems in projects is people not being clear who is responsible for each of those things or any other things. There might have been things not on that list. But really things fall through the cracks because someone doesn't know if it's their job or if it's someone else's job. And someone ends up picking up things that they don't think are their job and they feel like they're not appreciated or no one does it and then it falls apart. So how do you decide? This is where I put my researcher hat on and go, I want to go back to the very beginning and read, you know, everything that everyone ever wrote about project management, and then there's too much. But in my brain, the first step is you consult established experts. So you go and read the Project Management Institute's book, you go and read the Scrum Master's Guide. At Manchester, everyone on my grade is put through the Scrum Master training. The Scrum Alliance, official, thousands of pounds one, we all go and do it. 2-day training course online. It is actually incredibly valuable. Lots of it was not relevant, but knowing why it was not relevant was important. And no matter how many blogs I'd read and videos on YouTube I'd watched about Scrum, a lot of it I really didn't understand until I went on that training course, because they say, why was this designed in this way? What problem was this trying to solve? And then you can look at that and go, well, we don't have that problem, so we don't need that thing. Or, yes, we do have that problem, but the way you solved it doesn't work. All those kind of things. And they really explain what's behind it. The other one I put on here is the Dungeon Master's Manual. If anyone plays Dungeons and Dragons, I feel this is one of those, like with the Scrum Master's Guide and project management things, everyone says they've read it, but nobody actually has. And actually just go and read it. But also, it is amazing how much overlap there is between those two things. Being a Dungeon Master is basically being a project manager. You need to get a group of people and motivate them to work together on an adventure or a project. You need to find a team with comparable skill sets. You know, you need someone who's the tank who can stand at the front, and you need someone with healing that no one ever wants to do, but you need to find a way to make the healing person feel valuable and the tiny person who just wants to run around and stab things. You need to make sure those people work together and that they know how each of their roles is valuable to the project. You need to help them see how they're making progress. You need to give them milestones. You need to congratulate them on good work. You need to have an end goal in sight that everybody understands and finds useful and motivating. So that's just a little reminder that there's a lot of things you do in life that are exercising the same skills as project management. If you have never managed a project and you don't think of any of this as relatable because you're not a project manager in your job, have you ever organized a family holiday? Or a local football team? Or tried to get your uni friends to all go to the same pub at the same time? Like, all of those things could be project management, and you could exercise some of these skills. But yes, when you do read all of these guides, these are the questions I think are really useful to ask in trying to figure out, would this work for RSEs? Would this work for us? Who was this designed for, and when and where? What problem was it trying to solve, and do we have that problem? And how is our world different to their world? What things might not be relevant? What things might they be overlooking? My next step after you do that is then, has anyone else already done this? Consult local authorities. We've looked at, you know, the global scale project management people. But lots of what they say is useless because they don't understand universities or software developers. So is there anyone else who is a bit closer to what we do? This might be just your actual team. Lots of people do project management in a group, and other people in your group are managing projects. Has anyone written some documentation about how you're meant to do that and how many of you actually stick to it? There's the RSE Society, there's the Project Management Special Interest Group. In that case, you want to think, is this a recommendation? Is this a framework someone has laid out? Or is this a report of what people actually do? Because there is a big gap between those. Theoretical or imperial, if you like the fancy words. Are they taking one of those formal frameworks from before? Did they do project management training and adapt it? Or have they just kind of made up from first principles? Because you might be able to see, if you know what framework they started from to adapt, you can see what they adapted and why, what differences you might want to make. And again, what problem are they trying to solve? Is the problem that happened in their group the same as the problems that happened for you? And did they actually solve it? Or are they still having those problems, but with more paperwork? And then the last step, once you've done all of your research, is actually to just define your own. So you can take one of those established frameworks or your own internal documentation, or just write down what your team actually does day to day. If you haven't got documentation, take that as a starting point, but do adapt it. Talk to everyone involved. That means not just the developers, but the people who you need to report to. If you're saying our developers just want to get on and do their work and not have to do GitHub issues, or they don't want to have meetings every 2 weeks to report, but then you find out that your funding body needs you to submit timesheets and your developers have not been doing that, you have a serious problem. So find out what is the minimum everyone involved needs there to be in terms of reporting and paperwork and things, and how can you fit that all in. But experiment and adapt, and make sure you document it and share it and tell people about it, because all of these things work better if multiple people are doing it the same way. One of the big advantages I found at UCL is we have this framework. Everyone in our team, whether they are a manager or not, has to go through training on this framework, because even if you're not managing it, you are in it, you are being managed through it. And the fact that we all know that, really, no one follows the framework. We follow it somewhat, but at least we all know where we're coming from and what it is we're not following. We have the same terminology, we have the same idea of what the gold standard would look like if we ever bothered to do it, and we can collectively make decisions about what we're not doing. So always make sure you actually document it and share it. And then, yeah, share wider than your group, talk to other people, because there's a lot of us trying to learn this from that survey. A lot of people are struggling with this. If each of the groups, even in the UK, tried a different framework out and then all reported to each other, we might have solved the problem. But people try things and then don't tell anyone, so no one knows that that doesn't work. This is not exactly how it goes. You don't go, I will do my research and consult books and guides and training courses, then I will see what they did in other universities, and then I will define my own, and then everything is perfect forever, and I never need to learn about project management again. That is not how it works. So I was at this point in my SSI fellowship investigating project management and getting a little bit overwhelmed with all of that stuff. And I realized this was the perfect opportunity to do project management. I, in fact, had a project to investigate project management. So I decided to do project management, my project management project. And one of the best pieces of advice someone ever gave me is you only learn about 10 to 20% from reading stuff with these kind of skills. The rest of it, you just need to do it and see how it goes. So I decided to agile project manage my project management, because I could try it out just on my own by myself and see the whole process and do all the paperwork and things that you have to do in meetings with myself, and really see how it felt to be in a project that was run like that. And so this is the core of Agile. If you look at all of the frameworks and all of the documentation and stuff, they're all just fancy ways of doing this loop, which is do a thing, look at it, decide how it did or didn't work, change it, do it again, see how it works. So I decided to do that with my learning about project management. So this is basically the process we went through. If you look at your current process, find your documentation, learn what it is you need to learn. whatever framework it is your group uses or doesn't use, at least write it down and ask people what they are doing. If they're meant to be following a framework and not, what do they not do? You have to be honest about the bits people hate. You can just run a project and see how it goes if you've never done one before. If you've already got experience, you can skip that step. But don't forget, things outside of work count. The examples I gave before, if you have run a Dungeons and Dragons group or a family holiday or whatever, you have managed something. What did you do? What were the systems you used or communications tools or anything, and how did people feel about them? They're not the same people you might be working with, but it's an interesting experience. I actually did, when I wanted to learn how Scrum worked, I made my partner Todd do all of our weekend chores in Scrum. So we made like a little board with lots of sticky notes and we assigned times to them all. And then we're like, okay, we've got 2 hours to clean as much of the house as possible. How can we do it? Everyone pick up a ticket and like put it in the different columns and run around, and it completely fell apart. It was not a good way to clean a house, turns out. But I had a lot of fun. He was quite annoyed. And I learned some things. But yes, then you need to actually inspect it. What problems do you have in the current system or other people have? What parts do people not follow and why do they not follow them? Normally, if people are not doing the process, it's because they see no value in it, or the time cost and effort cost is not equal to the value. People are not filling in the forms. That's because the form is too long and they don't see the use of it. So can you make the form shorter, or can you tell them why they need to fill in the form? Don't forget to consider all stakeholders, people up and down the system. What group reporting do you need in terms of time tracking or goals, or, did our funders need to know that a certain number of your projects have succeeded? Therefore, you're going to need some kind of definition of succeed or not. And downstream, how do your developers feel about these things? How do the people actually doing the work? If they feel it's really annoying and cumbersome, they're never going to do it. So what do they already do? How do they feel? There is also what is in your control. Sometimes you simply have to do something because it is your job, and that's the way it has to be. If you work in medical research, you have to do upfront design of a lot of things. You have to pre-register trials. You can't really do agile because you have to set out your entire plan at the start, because at some point someone inspects it and says it is okay to treat patients in this way. And if you agile and change your plans 2 months down the line, you will probably be arrested. Same goes for engineering. This is the thing of like, this is why the traditional old waterfall style was from engineering, because if you're building a bridge, you really need to know the bridge will stay up. You need to do all those checks at the start, and then you need to follow through the plan. If you change your mind halfway through the bridge, it collapses and people die. Don't do that. So check what is your minimum standard that you legally are allowed to do. And then lean, I hate the term, but be sort of minimalistic but realistic. No one wants to do processes that have no value, so do the minimum possible paperwork that you can, but you need to know also how much you can do and not get in the way of doing the job. And check with all your stakeholders. Lots of people will tend to go, well, you have to do this, you have to, and you go, why do I have to? Do I really have to? Can't we just give you this thing that we already do? And they go, oh yeah, okay, that would work. I go, great, so I didn't have to do that, fine. So yeah, double check what is minimum requirements versus like nice to have, because there will be projects that go wrong and you can only do the minimum requirements of paperwork and reporting and things because you're so busy trying to get the code to actually run, you don't have time. But you need to know then what can you drop from the process if you have to. And you've inspected it, you've thought about your whole system, and then adapt it to yourselves, your own team, your own work. You have to have these discussions openly and honestly. People have to feel comfortable saying, I hate that, or I have done this before and it really didn't work. None of this should be a judgment on managers or on developers. It's if projects don't work, it's because the project management system didn't work, not because anyone's bad at their job. There's also being open-minded to trying new things. You can, if you come up with a new system, and you say, I think this will massively improve our projects if we all do it this way, lots of people will go, I don't want to do it that way. That's annoying. And if everyone is open-minded and you give people a trial period and say, okay, well, how about we do all our projects like this for 6 months? And then at the end, we agree some measure of did it work, has something, anything improved, but everyone has to really commit to actually trying to do it and not just stonewall and say, I refuse. If everyone tries really hard for 6 months and it doesn't work, then we won't carry on with it. You have to be evidence-based. Because a lot of project managers tend to go, especially with all the agile and all the terminology and all the silly systems, they tend to go, we're doing all of this stuff. We're doing daily stand-ups, we're doing blah, 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 blah. All the silly blogs and things and paperwork, and none of it is actually useful. So you have to be sure what is useful to you, to your team, to your specific thing. Do not have admin just for the sake of admin. So going back to Agile, I have talked about it a lot. It's not a cult. I have unfortunately been one of those people who was like, Agile seems a lot of work. Why do people do this? And then I read about it and went, oh yeah, it's great. I now want to Agile everything, including my chores. So I tried doing this with Agile: inspect, adapt, and act. So what is Agile? Where did it come from? The history of this is it was commercial software developers a long time ago, mainly in America, mainly white men because of the time that they were working. It didn't come all out of just the Agile Manifesto in 2001. They've been doing some of these things since the 50s and 70s. The main frameworks that you will hear about were invented like in the 90s and early 2000s, and the Agile Manifesto really kind of pulled that all together. And that's what people kind of credit with the start of this movement. But a lot of the things also came before. So if you look back at the sort of iterative design and inspect and adapt cycles and those kind of things, those were just adapting civil engineering and heavy mechanical engineering processes to software development. So what problem was it trying to solve? That was really because the engineering, heavy, linear, very tightly controlled waterfall process doesn't work in tech. For two reasons. Partly, the world moves very fast in tech. The world is moving increasingly fast in everything. But particularly in tech, by the time you have designed something, gone through lots of discussion, built the entire tool, done compliance and quality testing, and deployed it, the market has changed so much the customers are not there anymore and your project fails. There was some famous example of like, I can't remember what it was now. It was a military application or something, and they kept building a bit of software to run some piece of military equipment, and they were doing it the very long waterfall kind of way. It took 2 years to build the software to run the thing, and the lifetime of the physical thing they were trying to run was a year. So by the time they finished the software, the thing had already broken down and someone had bought a new one. And they did this 3 times before they thought that was a bad idea and thought maybe we need to work quicker. The other reason is because the developers felt like they weren't listened to, like they weren't respected. The upper management who weren't technical didn't understand the work that was going on, didn't know how to manage it because they'd never done it. This is partly in a lot of fields, you get managers who've never done the work. I think in our field that's less common, but it can happen. And how do you have managers who trust their people enough that the people can tell the manager how they are going to manage their own work? The third thing was you can get more profit from getting your products to the market quickly, even if they're not as good. And there is less risk from something going wrong than there ever was in engineering. So if you do something in tech and you do it badly and it all goes wrong, people uninstall the app or whatever. You might lose some money, but nothing catastrophic happens. If you build a car wrong and it crashes or bursts into flames, like Tesla's, people will sue you. You will have to pay out thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So you need to be sure it's correct. In software, we can build things that are wrong and deploy them and go, it failed, whoops. So long as we're not working in engineering or cars or like medical things. All of this doesn't apply if you're working with medical researchers. Do not try and be agile. But this is why it's useful to actually inspect it and think, are those problems the problems we are having? So then we can adapt it, or we can look at other people who've adapted it. Lots of RSE teams around the UK are working in a semi-agile way. Lots of this comes from some project manager higher up in the business heard the word agile and thought it sounded cool. And so they tell you you have to be agile. I definitely had job adverts that said I would be working in agile manner, and when I got into the job, they weren't. They just said we have to put that on adverts. But you can try and see, why has someone decided that this is a good thing? Why do they think we should do it? What have other teams done? So the team at UCL that I used to work for have actually published their own Agile manifesto. They have rewritten the original principles for today and for research, academia, university kind of setting, because a lot of those principles were very strict about the commercial world, and we just simply work with different kinds of people. The Manchester Research Software team uses a fairly standard Scrum kind of pattern, but with adaptations. We all do the Scrum training course, but we have our own internal guide of how we've adapted it and how we've changed it. So go and ask other people what they're doing, read and watch reviews. We've given talks at RSE kind of things that I believe are on YouTube. I am talking about it now. We should be sharing this stuff a lot more. We should be discussing what we like and don't like in different kinds of projects. Part of this is because each project is different. As I said before, there's long ones and small ones, and ones with 1 developer and ones with 10 developers and different applications. So once you've done 10 of the same kind of projects in order to finish that project, that's going to be like 20 years down the line. That's kind of a waste of time. Whereas if we get 20 teams across the UK to all manage the same kind of project in different ways, we can learn more faster. So we need to share this knowledge. So basically, teams have discovered that some of the ideas behind Agile are relevant to us, some are not, and we do have to adapt it to fit our needs. So how is our world different to the original Agile world? As I said, academia is not the commercial world. Our budgets are a lot smaller, our teams are a lot smaller, and our timescales are weird, different. Some are very short, some are very long. Our products might not be an actual product. Our business value, yeah, they are very clear. Is this thing going to make a profit? Is it not? Ours is, have we made the researcher happy? I guess. Have we accelerated their research? Have we accelerated somebody else's research? Have we taught someone a skill that will be useful to them in 5 years' time? So some of that fits, some of it doesn't. It's difficult. Some things that do fit us from the Agile world, some things we really have in common with the problems that they were trying to solve. We want rapid feedback from our researchers. We're not the specialists in the research field. They are the specialists. We are possibly working on things we maybe did in the past, or we're working on things we have no idea what they're talking about, and we're just building the code. So you need to show it to them, get them to review your language, your use of design, your usability, all of that stuff. You need to get their input really regularly, which is what Agile was designed for. We need our plans to then be able to change in response to that feedback. If someone tells you that they hate the color that you've made on their website and you just carry on using it, it's not great. So we need to be able to, or in fact, they say, it turns out I don't want a website at all. You need to be able to throw all your code out the window and start again. So you need to work in a way that enables throwing things out and starting again without too much annoyance. We do have a reasonable low risk of failure. If we build a tool for a researcher and it helps them write one paper and then no one else ever actually uses it, that's not the worst thing in the world. That happens to a lot of research. Again, unless you're in medical. Don't listen to me if you're doing medical stuff. But yeah, if we build something, if we build a website to show off some researchers' results and no one ever visits it, that also happens to a lot of research. It's not the biggest deal in the world. So we're not going to kill people if we fail. And we are talking between technical and non-technical people. Another problem they were originally trying to solve. We need to be able to control our own work. We can't have a researcher telling us how to do our jobs because they have no idea what it's like to be a software developer. And we have no idea what it's like to do their research. So each of those sides of the team needs to decide how to run their own work and trust each other to do that well. So this is where I'm just going to give you an actual example of what my team does. So hopefully this will give you an idea how you can adapt the very formal process to work for your own world. This is Scrum by the book. This is, you go on the full thousands of pounds training course and you do everything they say. What you'll have is the pillars and the values, where everything you do must be transparent. You have to inspect and adapt all of your processes. Your team must have commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. Being transparent, we're reasonably good at inspecting and adapting. We tend to argue about stuff a lot, I think, as RSEs. Everyone has their own idea of how is the best way to do stuff. So inspecting and adapting, okay. Transparency, somewhat. Lots of people are still a bit protective of their code. They don't want to be really open about how everything is done because there's a lot of imposter syndrome. People are worried about doing something wrong. We can do better at transparency. Commitment, actually like committing to do the work you're told to do, mostly good. Some people tend to get distracted by the latest fun tools. Again, focus. Again, openness. Does everyone respect all of their colleagues? Does everyone think everyone else in their team is fully capable of doing their job and should have autonomy over it? Depends on your group. Some people think some of their colleagues are idiots. Do you have courage to call out your managers if they're doing something wrong? Do you have courage to tell someone that you think their idea is terrible without telling them that they are bad at their job, but just in a respectful way? And to, if you find a process isn't working, to suggest a change. I'm not sure we're really great at those. And honestly, I don't think Scrum really works if you don't have that. Everyone is part of the inspecting and adapting is everyone feeling comfortable saying when they think something isn't working. Even people who are naturally very quiet, very conflict averse, you need to be able to say, this does not work for me, can we change it? And you need then managers who go, yes, let's try and make that work. I'm not feeling guilty, I'm not feeling threatened, we can try and make it work. So these words are kind of fluffy nonsense, but you do really need to think about them, because if you don't have those things as your basis, Scrum, you're kind of building on shaky foundations. Then they have all of the stuff that you have to do, all of the roles, all of the events. You have your developers, a Scrum Master, and a product owner. You should have a team of 4 to 10 people. It should be really clear. Each of those roles has like a list of things you're responsible for, documents and tasks. You do all of these meetings. You have sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospectives. Your sprints are 2 weeks long. You must maintain a product backlog and a sprint backlog and an iteration log. And each of those 3 things has a very defined goal. If you want to learn all about that, there's a free PDF online, but it's a lot of reading. And I don't know anyone who does that. I have never met a single person. I've met people in commercial software development who say they have all their team goes on the Scrum courses and they still never do all of that. So what does the University of Manchester do? We still use these terms for our roles. We still talk about Scrum Masters and product owners. Sort of my role as a project manager is I am the Scrum Master. And the PI, the researcher, whoever we're dealing with, maybe not the person who got the funding, but whatever postdoc is the most involved with the code, they are our product owner. They are the one who makes all the decisions about what is valuable to the project. We don't say, I think you need a website, I think you need AI. They say, we want AI in this tool. We want to make it into a mobile app. We want this to be able to be installable on Windows. And we have to believe them as the person who knows about their field, how it's going to be used. But in our real RSE world, that doesn't always happen. Some of those roles can overlap. So as project manager, sometimes I'm helping out the developers. Sometimes I'm doing Scrum Mastery things like coaching people how to do all the processes and making sure everyone updates their GitHub issues. Sometimes I'm being the product owner, because sometimes you work with a researcher who just doesn't give you direction. They might have had ideas, but then they're at a conference for 2 weeks, or they just got a grant that they really don't care about, or it's the PI who's trying to maintain some code someone wrote and then left, and they don't actually know how to use the code, so they can't tell you what's wrong. Sometimes you need to be your own product owner, and that is difficult and scary, but we can learn how to do that. We don't have 4 to 10 people. Sometimes 2, that's the minimum we will assign to a project in my group. Sometimes up to 6, but I would say it's also active people. Don't think about only RSEs in this. Active people might be the PI or the postdoc who is also developing the code, the people who are the users. How many people are actively contributing to the project in some way, not just people who are doing Git commits? Like, this is people in the whole team, not just developers. So there are people you can pull in to help you run things, even if they're not contributing to the code. They can still help you with prioritizing or monitoring or getting feedback on stuff. You're meant to have this really clear responsibility for tasks and decisions and administration. We kind of have the rule that you can delegate tasks. So the product owner, the PI, can tell us to make all the decisions, but you can't really delegate responsibility. If they tell us to make all the decisions, they can't complain that we made the wrong ones, because it was their choice to hand that over to us, knowing that we don't know what their use case is. If I, as the Scrum Master, tell my developers that they should maintain their own GitHub tickets, they should run their own meetings, they should schedule things, and I'm going to walk away, that's fine so long as they're happy with it. But if it goes wrong, that's on me, that's not on them. And I shouldn't have asked them to do that if I didn't know that they were capable of doing that. I had a project with a really good developer where he had a brilliant relationship with a PhD student writing the code, and I basically left them to it because that project could run itself. And all I was doing, if I tried to intervene and make them do sprint meetings and update boards, I was wasting their time. So I could delegate them to just assign their tasks however they wanted. But if it went wrong, that was my fault, not theirs. So we do have sprints. Our standard sprint is a month, which is quite long really, but that's because we're only working on each project 2 days a week. We kind of combine sprint planning and sprint review into just the update meetings, at which you say, what have I done? What should we do next? But we do try and do that report on everything you were assigned, even if it didn't get done. That's why it didn't get done. And then collectively decide on priorities. Product owner has to be there to choose what are the priorities. That shouldn't be us. We don't do retrospectives very much. We never do daily scrums because when you're split between too many projects, that's kind of a waste of time. I have worked on one project where daily scrums were great, but that's because there was 3 of us working on it 100% of our time. And it was wonderful. We have backlogs. Our increment is just a GitHub ticket because that's how we all work. And we don't really have like sprint goals. We do a sort of more of a Kanban flow thing for that. Like you just work on all the GitHub tickets and we have a project board. I would say then actually, the final step, Scrum by Me. That previous one was what the guidebook in our internal repository says. That is what our head of group will talk about at conferences. This is what I do day to day. Don't know if Adrian is on the call. I hope not. So me being Scrum Master, you're kind of also being a Scrum coach and just a general leader. I like the servant leadership model. If any of you have done leadership training, it's basically meaning like your job is to serve other people, not tell them what to do. We never have 4 to 10 people. I found that like 4 or 5 is really good. That's enough of you to have a discussion and share knowledge and like assign tickets to different people. Less than that, it's really hard to sort of discuss things. And there's normally just, well, you're doing all the work because you're the only person. If you have more than that, it gets a bit tricky because your meetings just get too long. 8 people is too many. It's really hard to have a cohesive bit of work that 8 people are doing. You end up splitting into smaller teams and dealing with different bits. Yeah, the delegation, I think I'm okay at. I do like having project retrospectives, which is something my team actually doesn't mandate at all, but I like doing them because I am new to project management. I've only been doing this for 1.5 years, and so I need that feedback personally. I have done that with researchers and with developers to say, like, how was that managed? What could I improve on? Was any of it annoying? We have the GitHub issues and the project board that we're meant to do, but I delete a lot of the automation if we're working on a small project. Because unless it is necessary, I don't want them to waste their time with it. In terms of having a defined goal for each sprint, I don't really do that because, again, it's a bit too vague. But I will always be really firm with researchers that they need to give us a single clear priority task for each sprint. And if we do more, that's fine. If we do less, that's fine. But they need to be the ones, it can't be coming from us. We have to say, here's all the things you have asked us to do in the last year, pick one. And that's the one we're doing in the next month. You cannot pick more than one. And you have to pick it. You can't ask us what's next. So, oh, I've been talking a lot, sorry. My basic conclusion is none of our work is by the book. None of the current project management systems out there really work for our world, which means just write your own book. But do write it down, because you need, in order for the team to work together, they need to know what the system is. Otherwise, you're not all doing the same system. Don't try to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Make sure that you're only adding paperwork if paperwork has value. It has to actually make life easier, not more difficult. Agile does seem to be the closest we can get of the sort of big framework that exist. Agile, maybe not some of the more complex ones, but take the small ones and adapt them and rip them up and see what you get. But do look at all the different ones because there's a lot out there, and the one you read about first might not fit your world. Think about your environment. So think about the other people you work with. If you are doing very formal Scrum and your researchers don't even know what that is, they are not going to be available on the right schedules. if you work really closely with like the platforms team and they update their software on a certain cycle, you need to fit with their cycles, not make them fit with you. So do be open-minded and experiment, do try different things, try and get your team to talk about it or talk to people in other universities about it, give talks, share things, and make sure you document anything you learned because we need to try and learn this together. Oh, okay, that's me. I think I'm done. Okay.
I think that's, yeah, exactly what we try and do with the seminars here is get people to talk about things elsewhere. We are getting close to time. There's a couple of quick questions. If people want to stick their hands to put them in the Zoom chat. I guess my one takeaway is Friday afternoons for donations and dragons.